Welcome to the Cibolo Creek Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Paul Wilson, here with my good friend Wyatt Marchant. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How'd I do?
You did good. You called yourself the host,
Yes,
which I never do.
because today I'm the host.
Am I normally the host?
Of course.
Oh, well, that's the only difference I saw, at least.
Okay. So for those of you who this may be your first time to listen to our podcast or watch it, Wyatt's typically the host and starts off with our greeting.
Yes.
And then the one time in the past that I tried it, evidently I butchered it. So I've been practicing.
It's a tough job to
And
get.
yeah. And I think I nailed it.
I think you did. It was great.
So today we're going to turn the tables a little bit. You're typically the one posing the questions, I'm providing responses.
Yeah.
But today we're going to let me pose questions and you're going to provide responses.
That sounds good. I'm excited.
So our listeners may get to know you a little bit better than they do.
Yes.
How you been? It seems like it's been a while since I've seen you.
Yeah, it does feel like that.
We've seen each other, but we haven't really
It's
had
passing.
much interaction.
Yeah, in passing. This is really funny thing. I don't know if I've told you this before. Before I got to know you very well, I used to call anytime anybody would run into you, like just in the office or whatever, awkward Paul encounters.
Wow.
And so, because it's always like, how you doing? Good. How are you? Okay. See you later.
Wow. I didn't know I had that effect on people.
I'll tell you what. I don't think it's really for many other people. It might have just been me, but
Is that what your experience was with me? It was just sort of awkward in
it
passing.
felt awkward. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then now we can talk for 3 hours at a time before we're
Yeah.
fine.
That's just maybe we didn't know each other very well.
I think that's probably what it was.
Plus, how old were you when you started working on our staff? Like the very first time?
18?
Yeah, so you were still pretty young.
Yeah.
You're how old now?
27.
27. So we've known each other for over 10 years.
Yep.
Because I knew you a little bit before you started on our staff. So
Mhm.
let's just let's begin with kind of getting a lay of the land. Tell us a little bit about your story. And we'll start with, you can start where you want, but I'm interested in how did you end up at Cibolo Creek Community Church? Like, what was the situation for your first participation? And then what brought you back?
Yeah, so I ended up at Cibolo just getting invited to something in the student ministry by some friends.
Oh, okay.
Corbin Gilmore and James Lucy invited me to some events and ended up hitting it off with the then student pastor, Nathan Bryant.
Yes.
At first I didn't like him, which I think is everybody's experience with Nathan Bryant.
Okay.
But that's just because he gives you a hard time.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, oh, him and I are very similar, actually.
He's a personality.
Yeah.
He has a very strong presence just when you encounter him from the get-go.
Yeah, from the get-go. To whereas like I kind of warm up and then I give you a hard time. Where he's like from the start, you know. And so, anyways, I ended up having a really good relationship with him.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what kept me coming back. So friends, and then having a good relationship with the student pastor.
Okay, so these were friends you went to high school with.
Yeah, actually, some of them from elementary school. So,
well, that's pretty cool that some Christian friends of yours invited you to come and be a part of something happening at their church.
Yep.
Because you weren't a Christian at the time, were you?
No, I was, well, I don't know. The timeline gets kind of foggy, but I was at least becoming one.
Okay.
I was on my way at the very least.
Now, you're an only child.
I am an only child.
Did you grow up in a family that went to church?
We were creasters occasionally. We were bad creasters, which is already bad.
You were bad creasters.
Yes.
So you went to Christmas, you went to Easter occasionally, not...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I didn't really have a whole... And, like, I knew we were Christians, but I didn't really know why. We never talked about it.
Okay.
Like I said, occasionally we would go to church, or I'd get drugged to church by a friend's mom.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I wasn't really a Christian, but...
Okay. Do you remember anything that Nathan gave you a hard time about when you first met him?
When I first met him, no.
Oh.
But I ended up dating somebody in the student ministry, and he loved to bring that up in front of everyone. So that was the worst.
Nathan was a really, really effective student minister.
Yeah.
One of the finest that we've had at our church, and had a wonderful influence. A lot of kids responded to him, and um, I always appreciated him. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, he likes to go deep on things,
yeah,
and so do I, and
yeah.
so
He's very intelligent.
yeah.
I used to always pick that up when he would preach in our Sunday services. You could tell he had a great mind.
Mhm.
Um, what was it about Nathan that you connected with?
Kind of that, like, um, at the time, I might not have been able to articulate it, but one, we were very similar.
Right.
So, like, just our personalities are pretty similar, in some ways. And then also, like I said, he likes to dive deep, and so, like, I'm someone who's gonna be asking a lot of questions,
Right.
and especially around that time, I was asking a lot of questions.
Sure.
Now my questions are way deeper, but for at the time, before I was really a solid Christian, I was asking a bunch of questions, and so even just listening to his sermons and talking with him, I knew that was somebody that I could probe with whatever question I had,
Yeah.
and he'd be able to give me a good answer.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then he also took a liking to me as well, and so we got lunch and coffee a lot,
Okay.
which he did with a lot of students. But
Yeah.
so, anyways, we just always had really good conversations. It's very similar to like you and me's relationship. Like we can have really good conversations, and so I could do the same. And I do that with him now.
Yeah.
I'll call him up and we'll
Yeah.
debate something or whatever.
Right.
And so that was a big piece of it.
So when you look at like student ministry from your experience, um, it was more of the content and the relational dialogue than it was maybe like the pizza and the games and the events. Would you say that's
I
true?
liked that stuff, and I liked being with my friends.
Yeah.
I think even just their presence, minus all the fun stuff, would have been fine. Like
Okay.
just being there with other guys that I know and trust.
Yeah.
Um, but don't get me wrong, like I liked the fun stuff, but
Sure.
it wasn't the most important thing to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, you were kind of beginning anew with an investigation of your faith and what you believed. So what were some of the compelling ingredients that led you to a decision to place your faith in Christ and begin to follow him?
So I guess to kind of answer that question, I first started wrestling with this because again, it was just kind of like an assumed thing that we were Christians, but I'd never made that decision. And so I first started wrestling with it uh, in conversations with my grandpa Dean, who also goes to Cibolo,
Yeah.
so listeners might know him.
Yeah.
He's the short fella that holds the door, and
So
he's
he's
great.
awesome.
But we started conversations about faith, and it was actually funny. The thing that really got me asking questions was some kind of documentary on like what hell will be like.
Oh,
Um, so so I don't always toss out the window like the fear aspect of Christianity. But
right.
anyways, that's what started the conversation. So I started asking all the like regular questions like, okay, well what about dinosaurs? Like how does it fit into this story? Like what about this? Who is
Right.
this? Why is Jesus? Why do you have to die? All so on and so forth. Simultaneous to all this, my grandmother, his wife, she had brain cancer before I was born, and she had surgery. She was fine. And then it ended up coming back, when I was, I don't know, I'm taking guesses, but like 10 or 12,
Okay.
probably 12. And she had surgery. Well, this time, whenever after surgery, she wasn't herself. And so she knew who I was, but like my other cousins who were younger than me, she didn't know who they were. Um, so she wasn't herself. She couldn't really be. It's really funny. My grandpa would go to work and he'd come back and it'd be like either super hot in the house or like 62 degrees because she'd go and turn the thermostat up and not change it. Or she'd turn something on in the oven and
Yeah.
forget that it was in there. So then, and so he had to unplug everything, so she just wasn't herself. She couldn't, she
Yeah.
wasn't taking care of herself. Well, then she ended up having a stroke that put her into a nursing home. And so I'm asking all these questions about God and I'm watching this woman who I know loves God go through all of this mess.
Mm.
And so I'm thinking like, well, what's up with that? Like,
Yeah. How do I reconcile?
how do I reconcile those two things? Um, and so I'm asking all these questions. I'm also witnessing that. It was kind of a subconscious thing for a while that, like, that was a big question that I had.
Right.
But then after I'd kind of come to answers that at least made sense enough to me with all the other stuff, the last one I had was like, okay, well, why does God allow this kind of suffering for those who love him? And or who at least haven't done anything to necessarily deserve it in
Yeah.
comparison to others. Um, and it was at her funeral that the pastor, who's also my cousin, he's a pastor, but the guy who was doing who's running the funeral, I don't know what you call that.
Officiating.
You're officiating the funeral. Um, he brought up the passage in John where Jesus and the disciples walk past a blind man, and the disciples ask, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be this way?"
Yeah.
And Jesus said, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but like essentially he's like this so the glory of God might be seen through him."
Right.
And so there I am, like, okay, well, why is this evil being allowed? But then at the same time, like that, what that told me was that God isn't necessarily making this bad stuff happen to my grandmother or to that blind man. However, he can bring beauty out of the ashes of a really bad scenario.
Okay.
And so that was like the thing that answered that question to me.
All right.
Um, at least well enough. I mean, that's the biggest question I think that exists is the problem of pain,
Okay.
but that is what answered it enough for me. And so it was that night that I gave my life to Christ.
So you remember like a specific moment where you like things
Clicked, yeah.
came together, made sense, and was it a prayer? Was it just sort of a conscious
Yeah,
dawning?
it was funny because I had, like, tried praying the prayer before that, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, this fell flat." I didn't hit the way I thought it was going to. But then that time, not that, like, any kind of, a bright light didn't show, but, like, there was an assurance that I had.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's a little bit of your story.
Yes, and then on top of that, so then I got saved, I got
Oh
baptized,
yeah, that's right. This is a great part of the story.
Nathan baptized me, and the day that I got baptized at the church, and all my family came. Well, my family wasn't going to church, as I mentioned before.
Right.
Well, since that day, they haven't stopped coming, so my parents and Dean,
Right.
and Dean needed to find a new church. He was going to church, but he needed to find a new church because he was here in Bernie now. He'd lived in San Antonio. So since that day, they've always come to church since that day.
Right.
And then on top of that, like, I don't know, what is it, 2 years now? 2 years ago, I got to baptize my mom alongside you,
Yep. Yep.
which was awesome.
Some awesome stories have come out of the whole journey of your own decision to follow Christ, and your parents have become such a blessing to our church family. Uh, both of them serve in a number of different capacities, and they've just become dear friends. And
Yeah.
Dean's like one of my biggest encouragements. He always has wonderful things to say and share about things he's learning. Even at his age, he's discovering about his faith, which is really cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So you've got to baptize your mom, and then you've preached a couple of times at Cibolo Creek.
Yeah,
What's it
3
been?
times, I think.
3 times.
Yep. I didn't burn the place down as you were worried I might.
Oh, I wasn't. But it's been awesome to kind of watch your journey unfold.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really grateful for our friendship and time we get to hang out together at lunch. And then we've been working on this podcast for what, 3 years? Long
Yeah, I think about 3.
3 years. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. So this podcast was really your brainchild. I mean, it
Yeah.
was your idea. You pitched it to me. I was kind of reluctant initially just because I saw it as another thing I had to try to
Uh-huh.
put in my schedule. So tell me, why were you interested in doing the podcast? How did you end up coming to the format that we ended up adopting? Tell us a little bit about that for you.
So I'm a big podcast guy. I listen to a ton of podcasts all the time. Probably too much. I probably need to work on the amount of time I spend in solitude. But I'm a big podcast guy, and something that I was kind of noticing was that there wasn't a whole lot of there's some now, but there wasn't at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of like conversational faith podcasts. Um, there was a lot of political podcasts, and the guy might be a Christian or the girl. And then there was a lot of podcasts by, say, pastors, but they were all very like rehearsed. You could tell they were obviously like reading off of a teleprompter. Or something. It's like it's quick. Here's a 15-minute
Yeah.
thing on leadership in Christianity or something like
Right.
that,
Right.
which is great, but it's just not my vibe. Um, and people like listening to conversations about whether it be faith, what faith in life or theology or culture. But they don't know who necessarily to trust.
Okay.
And if you aren't the kind of person who either two things has the time to dig into stuff to vet the person and what they're saying,
Mm.
or two just doesn't like that's not your thing, you're not really interested in that. Um, then it can be difficult to find somebody that you trust, and you might just be listening to somebody who's completely doesn't know what they're talking about. Not that we necessarily do, but
Right.
so I was thinking, like, okay, well, who better than to listen to your pastor talk with somebody about these things? Another thing, so the trust element, the conversational kind of faith podcast, and then two or three, um, you only have so much time on a Sunday morning to dive into stuff.
Right.
And there was a lot of things that I'm like, well, that could be talked about a lot more, and people probably want to hear a lot more. So also just kind of expanding out
Okay.
what people are actually able to get out of Cibolo Creek content wise.
Right.
Because I'm not a huge like. It can be hard. If they only come to church on a Sunday morning and they don't get anything else, and they're listening to something else, and who knows what that is, and it's like, well, why not provide something of
Okay.
value to them?
Yeah.
You know?
So expand a little bit on what we're able to tackle on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Was all the back room part of creating a podcast, was that a learning curve for you, or did you kind of already have an awareness of how to do all that?
I mean, I knew I needed a camera and a mic. Well, we started off with just mics. But then
Yes,
I'm
we
like,
did.
cameras would be better because the YouTube is a bigger. Everybody's on YouTube
Right.
of all ages.
Right.
And I love watching. And so, no, I had to kind of learn it. Like, I still don't understand lighting very well, like, but it works well enough.
Right.
And so, no, I had to learn a lot of that as we went.
Right.
Because we started off in the room behind me with
Yeah.
some bad little cameras that were really up close, and it was very clunky. And now it looks great. Like, so.
Well, one of us better than the other.
Well. Yes.
No, it's been fun. Like I said earlier, I was a little reluctant when you brought the idea up because I thought it was going to be, just more time I was going to have to spend
Yeah,
creating
laborious.
content. And I'm already kind of, my schedule's pretty maxed out, so I wasn't excited about that. So then we eventually settled on the idea of, "Well, let's just have a conversation." And it's not like I have to come in with, a manuscript and 4 points to make. And we could really just discover a topic as we worked our way through it, which, has been kind of fun because most of the time it's either the night before or sometimes the very day I'll get a text from you and saying, "Hey, let's talk about this topic today."
Yeah.
And sometimes it's kind of within my, spectrum of things I'm fairly well versed in. Other times I'm like, "Oh my word, I have to talk about that in 3 hours." And so I have to start, kind of cramming, trying to get at least a place to start. So it's been fun, but yeah, I've really appreciated the conversations.
Yeah.
Not only because of the subject matter. I think the thing that I've found to be the biggest blessing is you and I being able to, not that this is our purpose, but to model what it's like to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And because there are things that you and I don't agree on.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we've been able to sort of banter back and forth on those differences without, getting mean or with disrespectful or, all worked up. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Because that's kind of my personality. I hate I hate arguing and fighting about stuff. And so, I think it's just been a really refreshing format, at least for the two of us.
Yep.
We always joke about, the two listeners that we have, but
Yeah, yeah.
the people that I talk to that tell me that they listen to the podcast, I think that's one of the common themes that I hear is they just appreciate that it's a conversation and not some sort of, you know, teaching hour or
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, and that's what I listen to. So that's what I wanted to, if I was going
Yeah.
to create something, that's what I wanted it to feel like.
Yeah, and one of the interesting dynamics of our conversation is that there's like 40 years difference between the two of us.
Yeah.
I'm not quite ready to say I'm the old sage, but I'm older, just have been down the road a few more years than you. It's helped that so we've been doing this for 3 years, so, what's that? 24, 25, or 25, 26, 27 for you. We teased you about being a bit of an old soul.
Hmm.
So I think it's helped that the the conversation with you has come from a place that you're very aware, informed, you're very well read. And so it's not like we've just been making stuff up.
Yeah.
It's come from a place of substance. So um, you know, again, being reluctant initially, I've really come to appreciate it. I'm glad that we do it, and it's very it feels good when I talk to somebody who says they really enjoy the podcast.
Yeah. Same. Because then it makes me feel like I'm not, we're not just wasting our time over here.
Yeah, exactly.
And the cool part is that the episodes will live on like forever. So like they're not going to time out, you know?
Right?
And so even if in the beginning there's only both of our moms listening to it, people can still go back and listen to them,
Right.
and they'll kind of live forever in that way.
Do you have any stats about what our listening audience is by way of how many people participate? Do you have anything like
Yeah,
that?
like whenever I'm consistent in posting, we get a lot more listens on this than we do the sermons.
The sermons from Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because they're topical, and I try to make it attractive on YouTube. So
Right.
YouTube is really where we have a lot of more growth. Now, whenever I'm not consistent, it goes back down.
Yeah.
But um,
And
yeah,
we haven't been very consistent the last several months.
yeah,
A lot going on, but well, thank you for initiating the idea and getting it started, and um, we'll see what the future of it looks like. But I think for me personally, it's been time well spent.
yeah. I've really enjoyed it because like we'll have conversations here, and then you know time will pass, and it'll give me the opportunity to think about things more deeply, and all just because we filmed this, and so like I'm personally growing
Right.
as a result of these conversations.
Yeah, I actually would say it reverse. When you throw out an idea, it gets me thinking about like, no, what do I really believe about this, or what
Yeah,
do I
yeah.
really think about this, in anticipation of having to share some of that. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this idea. This 40 years difference between us. Um, we're different generations, different experiences. I grew up in church. That wasn't necessarily kind of a central experience for you. So I think we've discovered in the past that you and I look at church a little bit differently.
Mm.
We share a lot of similar thoughts, but there are parts of church life, the church world, that we might see different from each other. Um, Tell me in your words, for you as a 27-year-old young man, what is the church, and how do you look at it?
Yeah, so I mean, you always have to add this disclaimer, or else Christians will be like, they'll get on you. But the church is us, like it's Christians. But like I'm a proponent of the corporate gathering of the saints, of Christians, to come together, learn about the scripture, and worship with one another. So it builds a community. It's a regular thing that we do. Um, and so I guess that broadly is kind of what I see as the church. And then the church has different purposes. Worshiping, some main ones are worshiping the Lord and then also making disciples.
Okay.
And so, and then developing, because that's a whole process. So it's not just, hey, let's just get them in, but it's also the development once they're actually in.
Right.
So broadly, that's what I see as the church. I think most people would agree with.
Okay.
And what was the second part of that?
Um, well, there wasn't a second part. I just asked you kind of from your experience, what is your understanding of the church? But let me ask you. Um, so one of the tensions, one of the flashpoints of how people experience the church from different age groups
Yeah.
tends to center a lot around the Sunday morning experience.
Uh-huh.
What is it about a Sunday morning church service that appeals to you or doesn't appeal to you?
Um, most, I guess I might get heat for this, but most churches I think are overly feminized. That is not me saying that there's too many women in the building. That's me saying that the general tenor of a Sunday morning is very emotional driven, and um, feelings based and kind of more relational. And so, as a young man who, like we talked about previously, like I like to dig deep into things and to build up what, like, my doctrinal, I guess, ability.
Right.
Um, I feel like a lot of that is missing, and that's everything from like the worship songs themselves to the teaching to just the general feel of everything. Um, Even it being kind of a performance, that isn't the feminization side of things, but if it feels too much like a performance, say like worship or something like that, or even to like what the senior pastor wears, which is a funny thing, but like a lot of the particularly like the more mega church pastors, the more famous pastors, they're like 50-year-old dudes dressing like they're 18. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I want my pastor to be like a man, like a man, like I want him to be kind of manly, you know?
Okay.
I don't know. I don't like that for some
Yeah.
reason. It makes me suspicious. And so, but like that, or they have earrings or something. And I'm like, okay, well, there's no better definition of feminization than having earrings, buddy. So I guess in a, that's a lot, but the feminization side is really big. The lack of doctrinal depth, I think, is really big in a lot of churches. And then also, I was thinking about this earlier. It's kind of too individualistic.
Okay.
Um,
What do you mean by that?
the church for a long time kind of followed creeds and like, hey, we all agree on this. And now it's kind of like, well, you believe that and I believe this, and that's fine. And that goes along with our culture. Is that like, well, we all have our own beliefs. It's like, no, no, no. Like, if we believe the Bible is God's word and that it's inerrant, then there is a answer. So we should strive to that answer. Like, we can't both be right, you know?
Right.
And so I guess like, and that probably goes back to the lack of doctrinal depth, is that that's just kind of an accepted thing, um, that people can have all kinds of different beliefs about God and their
Right.
faith.
Right. It's interesting. I was just having a conversation with some friends of mine. I got this text group that I'm in. There's five of us. We all went to college together. One of them I actually went to high school together with. But we were just talking about the fact that men have a hard time connecting to church,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily because men are men. It's because the church can be a place far more relatable to and comfortable for women.
Yeah.
There's just the church, if it's not careful, can create this very feminine, safe experience, or this feminine, appealing experience from, again, style of music to the way that things are, even decor can become a part of what makes the church appealing to women. Whereas men don't necessarily connect with those things in those ways.
Yeah.
Same with how men relate to one another. Women are just far more comfortable kind of connecting quickly with somebody else. Men tend to be somewhat more reserved and careful about how much they disclose or how quickly they, you know, relate to somebody. So I was I was talking in this group about the fact that it's not always because the men are bad or the men are, disinterested. It's because their common experience with churches, they don't connect with it.
Yeah.
Um, and I ended up talking about some of the things that we've done at Cibolo to try to remove some of that uh, lack of appeal for a man to, participate. And I I feel pretty good about the fact that Cibolo Creek has a really active group of men who participate throughout the life of our church and tend to find Cibolo Creek a place that's a bit more relatable to them as men.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I would say too, like, another thing that is like if the senior or if the pastor, whoever's teaching, is like unwilling to say the hard things, like men pick up on that.
yes.
And so a lack of courage in the church
Okay.
amongst cultural pressure has pushed men away. And then also, like, yeah, it's not just because men are bad, but society's telling men that they're bad,
Oh, yeah. The
you know?
message to men is not positive.
Correct. And then they go to church and it's overly feminized, or that's, yeah, it's overly feminized. And so they're like, okay, well, this isn't the place to retreat to, which is like why, studies have come out that like young men are gravitating towards Catholicism and Orthodoxy.
Why do you think that is?
It's more serious.
Okay.
It takes itself more seriously. Not that it isn't without its flaws or any of that, but
Right.
it at least takes itself more seriously.
Hmm.
And it there's kind of a instead of a relational bent in the services, there's more of a sacredness and holiness
Oh, okay.
feel to it.
Yeah.
So it feels like there's something more going on here
Hmm.
than, getting
That's
teary-eyed because of a Brandon Lake song. Not that I dislike Brandon Lake because he has
no,
some
no.
bangers, but you
It's
know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. I think that's really interesting, that observation that not that it's not relational, it's just not the primary emphasis as much as what you said, sacred or serious. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Talk to me a little bit more about what you perceive as the doctrinal challenges for the church.
I think um I think like really diving into scripture, and then, it just sucks that like a lot of Christians have to look elsewhere to like figure out what exactly they believe and why they believe it. So I guess almost like an apologetics bent, but like really just explaining what they believe. And I know like you've tried to tackle that issue whenever we've been through like here's some like the basics of the faith a couple
Yep.
years ago.
Right.
And so that, and then like I think even just like good Bible studies that really dig into that, because I know that you can't do everything on a Sunday morning. But a lot of churches are missing good Bible studies, whereas like life groups are just different. And so you can dig in on life groups, and hopefully you do if you have a really good life group. But it's just going to be different, particularly for men. And so I think, so probably missing some of that, really kind of diving in. But then, then you have to have men who are leading those life groups who are also that are really strong and they know what they're doing. It can't just
Right.
be let's read around and talk about stuff.
Yeah.
But really guiding it through. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of this has become an issue because the world has made us have to answer questions that we didn't think we had to answer. So like, okay, well, why are men and women different? Okay, well, I didn't think I had to answer that question, but now I do.
Right.
And thought it was just kind of a given. And so then I think a lot of Christians for the past, 10 years have felt on their back foot on basic questions.
Mm.
And the church, I think, did a poor job of equipping to begin with, and then
Right.
also responding afterward. Um, and so, and also we're coming off of the heels of the new atheist movement in the early 2000s, post 9/11, and now that's kind of dead. So people are coming back to faith.
Okay.
Young people want to know, like, they're like, okay, this doesn't work. This sucks. No God, doing it ourselves. I can do whatever I want as long as I'm happy. Well, they're all miserable.
Right.
So that didn't work. Okay, so
Right.
what is it and why? And so answering those questions um, are are really important. And like, so if you go into a church and I don't know, if they're just talking about the same, I guess, peripheral thing of being nice or kind or whatever,
Hmm.
like nobody wants. Okay, why don't I have to come to a church to hear this? You
Okay.
know?
So something a bit more challenging, a bit more. I don't want to say confrontive as in confrontational, but just a more honest look at things in real life
Yeah.
is probably more of what folks are looking for nowadays.
And in scripture, like me and my wife watched The Chosen, right?
Right.
And there's pieces of it that I'm like, I remember that, but I don't really know what. And granted, The Chosen takes a lot of like artistic leeway with
Right.
with what they're doing, but like I know that in scripture, but I don't know it that well. And so, or my wife would be like, I don't remember that at all, or whatever. And so, people just don't know the scriptures very well.
Yeah.
It's not the bedrock. It doesn't feel like the bedrock. It's like an add-on to the larger topic that we're trying to tackle.
Um, you were mentioning about life groups or small groups, um, not necessarily being the kind of place where theological depth is necessarily achieved.
Again, depends on the people.
Depends on the people, depends on, but my, I mean, I've been in the church world for a lot of years. I've been around the small group movement for about as long as it's been, really popular. I always find small groups coming up lacking.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is that people, they just have very different expectations coming into a group. And I think the two big expectations that tend to clash in most small groups is you got some people who are showing up, they just want relationship. And
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just like, we're looking for friends who share similar values and we can kind of quote unquote do life together. We can enjoy a friendship and be involved in each other's life. And then you have that other person showing up in the group, not saying that they don't want relationships, but they're looking to, I want to study and I want to dive down into the scriptures. And you got 8 people in a living room and they all have these very divergent expectations. And so this may be somewhat cynical on my part. I've my experience overall with life groups is basically disappointment because people come with different expectations. Now, you've been in a life group,
Mm,
have you?
yeah. Not one that really stuck, but
Okay, so what would you say? I don't want to ask this. What would you think could make for a successful life group experience?
I think like I was about to bring up what you just brought up. So you need to agree on like, okay, well, what is our aim with this? And so, because I'm a big proponent of Christians finding other Christians and then that being like their small, like that's their clan, for
Okay.
lack of a better term. Um, and so I would say you need to agree upon like, okay, well, what's the goal of this group? If the goal of this group is to like just do life together. So, you've given a perfect example of this. You can give it better, but essentially you'd be in a life group and you're actually talking about like what is going on in everybody's life upstairs. And then the bell rings and you have
Yeah.
to go downstairs and the Bible study starts and it's all
Right.
weird.
Yeah.
So it's like, we'll agree upon like, okay, well, we're just going to do life together and like, we're not going to work through this workbook. Maybe we'll all pray with one another, and we'll do that, but, like, it's not gonna be the study, um, or do it the other way and make it just a study. But, like, agree upon, like, what
Okay.
the goal of the group is, and then also for me, like, I always get group pastors because it's part of their job. This is not a target at anybody, but they always like to put people in specific groups based upon age or life stage, which makes sense. If you just got a form from this somebody saying like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I want to be in a life group," that makes sense. But like I don't necessarily care about just being put into a group of people that are my age. You know,
Right.
um, if I say I want to be in a life group with these people and they're older than me, I don't. You either let me do it, I'm going to do it apart from your ministry, one or the other.
Right.
And so, um, I like multi-generational stuff,
Yeah, me
so
too.
allow the groups to really choose that. Don't be a stickler on
Okay.
those kinds of things.
Yeah. Now, in the past, you have you've had this very strong opinion about the value of people sitting around a table eating together.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me where that comes from.
You know, I think it's just kind of one of those things that's etched on our hearts that sitting around a table eating is like where community and conversation happens. There's always a saying like, conversations around the dinner table. Like that's of times, times of old, that's where it happened. And then now people don't do that as much, and that sucks.
Yeah.
But like I grew up sitting around, that's probably why I'm such an old soul because I was an only child. So I just had to sit around the dinner table with my entire family who are all either my parents or grandparents, and we would talk. And so we would talk politics or culture or whatever,
Right. Right.
religion. Um, but I think that's where that kind of stuff happens. And it's also just a disarming place.
Mm.
You're not sitting in a circle and you're not like, you don't feel like you're forced to talk about it. It just
Right.
happens organically as you share a meal.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, in the scriptures, they're always eating.
Sure.
So
Would you say that a ideal small group experience for you would be, let's just show up at somebody's house, have a meal together, sit around the table, talk about life, talk about what's going on in each other's world, and leave? That would be sufficient?
yeah. And then if we get into some kind of study, great. But like that will need to be a thing that we agree upon like that night. Like, okay, yeah, let's go do we
Yeah.
want to do that? But I'm not going to interrupt this conversation to do it,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah, if I could create, like, the ideal world, that would be my preference for a life group or small group,
Yeah.
is find 8 other people. We rotate houses each month or how often we get together, and we just sit around a dinner table and eat. And the thing I hate about it is so often, at least in our American culture, it then ends up becoming a competition about who can set the prettiest table and create the, most elaborate meal,
Yes.
which is so unfortunate.
Hospitality gone wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I would rather just show up and everybody bring their favorite, cereal,
Yeah, yeah.
and we just bowls of, milk, and just it's the sitting around together and not like trying to execute some agenda.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on in your life and how you doing, and laughing and talking about things, because when I've had experiences like that with, typically with a small group of guys, um, if you do it regularly enough, eventually the conversations stop being surfacey.
Yeah, yeah.
And you end up talking about things of substance.
Yep.
You end up talking about spiritual things because now everybody's comfortable with each other and we can be far more transparent and honest. And in my opinion, I always feel like I'm sort of like the bad guy for this. In my opinion, really authentic conversations around a table where we talk about things that are real. Um, to me, that's deeply spiritual. And in my mind, that's a lot of what I think discipleship is.
Yeah.
Um, I've never been a big fan of the, let's get a workbook and you read and you answer 18 questions and everybody brings, um, there are 18 answers. And again, I'm not critical of it. I'm just saying it's never worked for me.
Yeah.
It's always seemed somewhat plastic. And I don't know that I don't typically learn best in that kind of a setting.
Yeah.
And then, and we've mentioned this before, it's always been hard for me as a pastor to be in those sorts of groups
Yeah.
because I don't get to be an equal.
Yeah.
Everyone sort of looks at me to have another sermon for them or
Yeah, that's
have the
unfortunate.
answer. So, um, my life group or small group experiences have been uh, somewhat of a challenge just to find a safe place for me to be a person
Yeah.
rather than a pastor.
You gotta find people who think of you like I think of you, because like
Yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah,
feel
you
that
wouldn't do
way,
that to me.
but I'm used to talking with you about stuff and
Bantering back
disagreeing
and
or whatever.
forth. Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, but yeah, another thing, like I would almost like in my future life group or whatever, I might even just try something of like, hey, this is a life group where we're all Christians. Like, okay, well, let's try to make it a point that like we're all spending time in the scriptures throughout the week. So instead of like all coming and just reading through the same thing and then talking about it in a kind of forced manner, why don't we just, as part of the conversation at some point in the night, just go around the table and say like, hey, what have you like learned, or what are you like chewing on right now?
Yeah,
Or so then everybody has a different thing,
right,
and then the conversation can just go from there. So it's
right.
not this like weird expectation. It's just more of like, where have you been? What did you find interesting, or what have
Yeah,
you read or
yeah,
found interesting
exactly.
this week, or whatever. So it's not some weird, you know,
Yeah,
rehearsed thing.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. Okay, so um, let's take it out of the realm of the church and down to the realm of an individual, like an individual follower of Christ. What are some things that you as a young man are observing about negatives or positives about how most Christians go about living their lives as followers of Jesus?
I would say that a lot of people compartmentalize it. So they have their faith over here, and they have the other areas of their life. And so that can either look like just going to church on a Sunday, and then throughout the rest of the week, they're different. This is church John, this is regular John.
Right.
Or they even compartmentalize it throughout their day. So, like, well, in the morning, I'll read my Bible, but then again, the compartmentalize
Yeah.
continues on. So I see a lot of that. Somebody who's even, I mean, I'm guilty of that sometimes. I think we all are. I would say too, like, there's pros and cons to the like emphasis on the relational side. So, like, the pros is that it can cause a lot of people to individually grow deeper in their faith. Um, but the con is you don't, you have this weird relationship with Christ that, I listened to this guy named Nathan Finocchio, and he's like, yeah, Christ is like your lovesick boyfriend.
Mm.
And that's a weird way to look at God.
Yeah.
And, yeah, because then it's like how you interact with him, and then how you experience, how you actually live it out, and how you look at sin is all then wrapped up in like this relational weird thing.
Okay.
So like that bleeds in,
Okay. So
comes down from the church.
let me interrupt it. In your mind, like for Wyatt Marchand, you don't you don't look at God from sort of like he's my boyfriend kind of thing, romantic
No, I don't.
interest.
Yeah.
So how is it that you generally view God? What's the predominant picture that you have to describe how you relate to
There's kind of two. So father and king.
God? Okay, that's interesting.
Um, but even father has um a more reverent feel to it.
Okay.
Now, whenever I've, fallen away for some time and I come back, I know that God also has the very warm, embracing side to him, and I'm grateful for it because I'm always having to come back.
Right.
But generally, the thing that makes me come back it is a fear of it's a out of, it is a fear of some kind, not just that, like, yes, I also want to experience God's love, but, like, he's also my king, and I've chosen to follow him. I am now his servant.
Right.
So, I had, I got to we get to choose whom servant we want to be, and I chose him. And so, yeah, 'cause, like, where is he right now? Well, he's on a throne in heaven, surrounded by beings worshiping him 24/7, and I'm gonna see him as, like, a pal? I don't know. Kinda weird, but
Yeah.
now he was a friend whenever he was here, um, well, he's not here anymore, so
Oh, so do you think there was a significant change in how we encounter Christ versus when he was here and who he is now?
probably not, like, I think people probably interact with him, um, because if you ask somebody else, they would see him more as the friend, but I think that there needs to be, like, a balance on how we see him, and so but, I mean, even the disciples called him Lord. Like, yes, he was still kind, but they still treated him as the rabbi.
Right.
That's why they were so upset whenever he tried to wash their feet.
Right.
So they still had a reverence to him, towards him.
Yeah.
Um, he just acted different than all of the other lords, you know?
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. You said the exact same too that I would say.
Yeah.
I'd put him in the order of king and father, but um, yeah, I think it's really interesting for a person to decide what is their predominant image of God in their mind, because I think it ends up influencing how they relate to him.
Yeah.
And
But that's part of my problem with how a lot of Protestant churches do it is that if people are only given one option,
yeah,
they don't decide, they just inherit.
oh, that's a great observation. Yeah,
And so if they're only presented the pal Jesus, pastors get up there and call him Daddy God.
some pastors, not
Yeah,
not this pastor,
I know, but some,
right?
and I'm like, "What are you doing? What are you doing with your skinny pants and whatever else?" I'm just like, "Come on." Well, now it's the oversized look, but you know what I'm saying? I don't, and so,
Yeah,
yeah, most people inherit, which is why a lot of young men will go to church like we are talking about, and they're like,
yeah.
this isn't it."
This isn't anybody I would follow.
Yeah,
Is when it's been dumbed down, feminized, soft.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Any other observations about like contemporary Christ followers and what you're seeing as a 27-year-old man?
Um, they're becoming more courageous, I think,
Who?
Christ followers.
How
Because
so?
because the kinda like I was talking about, like, um, culture is just changing right now, and so, with that, Christians have become a little bit more outspoken, and so and we've got some, at least a couple of, you know, moral wins behind our back, and so we feel a little bit better at ourselves, not being completely beat into the ground. Um, but they're becoming a little bit more courageous, and again, I think that that's just a result of just how messed up society's gotten, that they're like, "Okay, well, we gotta speak out now." So the
Yeah.
church is caught up, 20 years later, but
Right. Okay. All right. Two more questions that I have for you.
yeah.
Um, well, the second one will be something related to a very current event. Um, First question is this. So you and we've covered so many different topics throughout the course of this podcast. Um, Most of them we generally agree upon. We've had maybe one or two where you and I might have very different perspectives. I don't know, very different, but we have different perspectives. One of those is around the whole discussion of complementarianism and egalitarian. Like, who are men and women toward each other or in relationship to each other in God's design.
Yeah.
And I take more egalitarian perspective. You take something different. I'm interested. Tell me, uh, I'm interviewing you. Tell me where you come from in that perspective. What's some of the foundational or fundamental components about the view that you take and why you've landed there?
Yeah, so I'm a complementarian. Probably what you would call a soft complementarian, because then there's hard complementarians, and there's also like patriarchalists or patriarchs.
Okay.
I wouldn't consider myself one of those, but I'm definitely a soft complementarian. So what that really means is that I believe that men and women are obviously both different, and they have different roles that complement one another
Okay.
inherently. Now, before people lose their minds, obviously there are going to be a wide range of the spectrum of where a man fits and where a woman fits, but generally there are different roles for the different sexes, and none of this is about. First off, I believe scripture is very clear on these things.
Okay.
And so that's like I was even like kind of writing down some thoughts in preparation for this. And at the end I was like, wait, but my first reason is that I think scripture is very clear on this. And so from the garden pre and post fall, I think it's very clear to if you want to talk about church leadership, it's very clear in the New Testament, I believe. Um I've heard the other arguments from the egalitarian side, and this isn't me knocking anybody, but like I just think that the depths one has to dig to make sense of it
Right.
is too deep for me to dig. Um, and so I'm also my theology is a very conservative one in that I have a play it safe theology. If
You
it's
do have a play it
yeah,
safe?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like if it seems clear, then I have no reason. I've unless there's overwhelming evidence to the opposite, I have no reason to think otherwise.
Okay.
Like who am I to make that
Yeah.
call? And so, yeah, I think scripture is very clear on this, and it's a role based way of looking at it, where one is not necessarily better than the other, but they're just different. So whenever I talk about this to a lot of people, I'm like, yeah, well, I think for instance, the man or the father, the husband, is the head of the family. Well, why does the wife get a worse position? Like, well, you're the one that made it worse. I didn't say it was worse. It's just different. Or only men can be pastors or elders. Well, I didn't say that a woman's role in the church was worse. You just assumed that.
Okay.
And so, and honestly, I think I have so many thoughts on this, but
It's kind of fun to watch you squirm.
man, I do. Well, I'm trying to make all of it come out in a way that makes sense. But like in Genesis 3, verse 16, I believe, where God is talking about, where he's giving the curses to man, to Adam and to Eve. Part of Eve's curse in the NIV is your desire will be for your husband. And everybody reads that and they're like, well, great. And it's like, well, wait a minute. That's a part of a curse. So it can't mean what that says it means.
Right.
Well, it's actually your desire is to dominate your husband. So there's going to be something that, and I blame, well, why do we assume that a woman's role that's different is worse? I think it's that part of that curse that is rearing its head in our culture. Does that make sense?
No.
Well, I guess we can just forget about that. But
No. Keep going. Maybe you just need to unpack it a little bit more
I can't have that, and I'm upset about it.
on the woman's part.
Yeah, for instance, yeah.
Okay.
And so I think that is part of that curse is to be over, say,
Okay.
the
So
man.
I'll just check, make sure I'm tracking with you.
Mm-hmm.
You think Genesis is indicating that because of the fall of sin
Mm-hmm.
and the curse that it brings upon human society, God's design, that part of that complication, part of that curse would be that a woman's going to crave a certain superiority or equality with men that she won't be able to achieve.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
or that she will be able to achieve. It didn't say that you won't necessarily be able to, but just that is outside of God's order.
So it's not going to provide what the fulfillment or meaning or satisfaction that she may desire it to have.
Correct.
Okay.
Though, and though the world will tell her it will. So, for instance, as
Right.
an example of this, I blame this egalitarianism. I think has caused a lot of issues. And feminism is kind of the place where it started. But like, culture told women that they can do all of these things and have all this stuff. Okay, well they have it. Okay, so how are women happier now? Do you think women are happier now?
No.
No, they're miserable. So having it didn't help. And I'm not, correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, but it seems like the closer and closer that we get to a truly egalitarian society, the more unhappy both the sexes are.
Hmm.
And then it just causes all kinds of other issues. So, like, where does the feminization of the church come from? Well, and so, and also, I think that the egalitarian thing, like, if men and women can do any role, doesn't matter, just fill a slot. Well, the transgenderism thing sure starts to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think that's a reach.
Maybe. And it might seem like a mundane. Here's the thing, like, my drawing the line at complementarianism can seem kind of mundane. Like, well, why draw the line at, like, why can't women be pastors or whatever? It's like, well, one, it's not my rule, but or at least I'm not the one creating it. But it might seem mundane, but I think that that's kind of where it comes. Like, I think, for instance, I think that we would be way better off if men were empowered to be godly leaders of their family rather than not speaking to them in that way. And so I think that we get a lot further if we speak to men and women according to the roles that they play in a family and society, so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, I'm just asking about your perspective on that. I'm not necessarily sure that your portrayal of egalitarian in what you just said would be my understanding of egalitarian.
Yeah, I wasn't responding to necessarily
Yeah.
your understanding.
I don't necessarily think I believe in different roles, different responsibilities. Um, I believe that I believe gender is a design of God, both male and female. I guess the part I strive for in egalitarianism that I don't find in complementarianism is um, different roles, but not different value.
Mm-hmm.
Like for some reason, the camp I've come from or the conversations I've been in about complementarianism, I keep seeing this like one over the other, and that's the part that I wrestle with the most.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I see, regardless of different roles and responsibilities, a value and an equality to both of those roles functioning well and being fulfilled in order for the whole to work.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
So, um, yeah, I'm, uh, where part I'm trying to say is there's parts of complementarianism kind of in its kind of traditional packaging, I think violates some important values that I see in the scriptures.
Uh-huh.
But those values that I see in the scripture, I think at times you might portray as, well, I have to dig too deep to find those. I have to work too hard to make those happen. therefore they're not self-evident, therefore I don't necessarily embrace them.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm I am suspicious that even subconsciously, in order to make the egalitarian thing work, we apply it and then do the work to justify it.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily what I'm saying that you're doing, but I
Yeah.
feel like for a lot of people, um, that is what happens.
Okay. So you're thinking maybe a lot of egalitarianism is built on, I want these things to be true
Yeah.
because it's easier or maybe more popular, less controversial. Therefore, I'll believe it to be true and then I'll make up the argument to get there.
To me, it's no different than a lot of the arguments that we're hearing now that have been heard before, but that are more popular now about justifying homosexuality. Not that they're the same thing, but well, the verses that are talking about homosexuality, that was just of the time. Or
Right.
two, well, it wasn't man with man, it was man with little boy. So it was just talking about like pedophilia.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, I actually think I might have to bleep that word. But
Why? Because it'll get censored
yeah,
for it?
yeah, it'll get taken off YouTube. But I see that occurring. So like, okay, well, you have these people who want homosexuality to not be an issue anymore, and
Right.
it's like, you know, it would be a lot easier for me if it wasn't.
So
But
then they back into the argument.
yeah, they go looking for something.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Interesting.
yeah. Well, also, and like you even said, like the equal value thing. Like, for instance, I think I'm the head of my household, but I think my wife has equal value. She just have a different role,
Yeah.
and my wife agrees.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just a different role. Equal value, just different role.
Okay. So if you're the head of your house, then what is she?
Um, I don't really know the name for it, but
Okay.
what I mean by head is like whenever Eve ate the apple and then gave it to Adam, God immediately held Adam accountable for that. Both of them were punished, given
Right.
the curse, but he immediately went up to Adam and was like, "Yo, what the heck, dude? Like, you know, it's not what he said, but he was the
He
one that
might
was
have.
he was the one that was held accountable for such a thing." And so in that way, like I feel like you know how you know the verse that says that like teachers will be held
Yeah.
to a
James.
higher account.
Right.
I kind of see the same thing for like husbands and fathers of their household.
Okay.
Um, Now that isn't necessarily clear, explicitly said in scripture. Um, but the training up your child in the way that they're supposed to be, that kind of thing. Like, I feel like the father sets the tenor. Also, like stats end up bearing this out as well. So you see, if a child goes to church, the likelihood the rest of the family is going to come is like 13%. If the mother goes to church, the likelihood the rest of the family is going to come is like 30. If the father goes, it's like 90.
Hmm.
And so there is something that I think is reflected in scripture that I don't attribute to just the cultural time, that the man kind of points the way. That does not mean that he doesn't listen to his wife or any of those things, but like when it comes down to it, someone's got to make a decision, and if they don't agree, someone has to. And I think Timothy Keller kind of made this argument, like if someone has to make a decision, I have to. I don't like that necessarily, because then I'm held responsible for it.
Right.
Like it's a heavier burden sometimes. Um, but I think that men should carry the heavier burden. Like we're here to do that,
Sure.
you know?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, everything that you just said, I, as more egalitarian, I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah.
I think I think the place where maybe egalitarianism gets dinged, in my estimation. I think at times it gets portrayed as somehow making men less so that they are equal with women. And I'm not interested in that. I'm really about how do I take both of these genders created in the image of God to be their strongest best, that a man is all that God created man to be, and a woman is all that God created a woman to be. And then in an equality of worth and value, role and responsibility, together, that oneness is the best way to proceed.
Uh-huh.
And again, it's possible that just our experiences or our observation of like the common portrayals of the two different frames of thought are not necessarily completely well informed, accurate. Because I'm working from kind of that negative stereotype that complementarianism is creating this I'm over you kind of thing. I'm better than you. I'm stronger. And I don't mean stronger physically, like I just carry more weight and power than you do. And that's the part that I think may be incorrect, an incorrect understanding of complementarianism. Complementarianism. I think, again, in egalitarianism, maybe one of the poor perceptions of it, at least in my perspective, is that I'm somehow dumbing down the man, giving him less weight, less responsibility, and that's not where I'm coming.
I don't think that's where you're coming from. I think that I haven't thought about this too deeply, but why not just say it? You know, like I think Adam and Eve, like that's kind of almost like a test case for just like human behavior, like between men and women. So like the first thing Adam does when called out is he abdicates responsibility for it. So I think I think men have a proclivity to abdicate responsibility, if not explicitly like,
Oh,
you're the thing, do this.
sure.
Like, and so, and then also like part of the curse, like I was talking about earlier, is that, okay, well, God said that women are going to try to subdue, dominate, be over men. Now, that alone is worrisome. And then you add on top of that men's likelihood or
Sure.
proclivity to abdicate responsibility,
And you got a mess.
then you got a mess. So I almost think that like egalitarianism in and of its like egalitarianism equal, they aren't necessarily, they could do whatever they want. You can kind of switch them out. Not necessarily that's what you were saying, but
Yeah,
like you're going to have issues.
without a doubt.
And yeah, and so I see that being a big problem, and I think that it's going to happen because of the man's proclivity, and then women's, the part of the curse is literally to do that. And so I mean, I don't know too many. How many times have you heard "happy wife, happy life"?
A lot.
Yeah. Does that sound like it's coming from a dude who's like really taking his responsibility up?
No.
No. But like that's just that's the cultural norm between most married
Right.
couples that I talk to. I haven't heard very many that are
Right.
different.
Yeah, and that's again, I didn't come here to have this whole conversation, but that's why, at least in my inner workings on this, I do create such a importance on Genesis 1 and 2 versus Genesis 3.
Mm,
Like I I am trying I do see the fact that the fall complicated the design. It it uh, contaminated the original design. So I am very interested in the original design, and I have a strong belief in the redemptive work of Christ to restore that. So I think in my workings of how to try to make them both of equal value and worth is I'm trying not to only accommodate the realities of the fall. I'm trying to think in terms of the hope of the resurrection and redemption. So,
Yeah.
um, because if I look at Genesis 1 and 2, I see an enormous equality
Yeah. I
between
still
the two.
see a headship between the two,
Okay.
but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I would almost just look at it slightly different when we can end with this, but just like
Yeah.
the fall has just made the order that I see more problematic.
Yeah.
So before there wasn't an issue, and then the fall is what made the order
Sure.
an issue.
And
Yeah.
that's the nature of sin. Okay, let's switch to one last question. You and I are both pretty interested in culture,
Yeah.
things happening in our world. You and I, we talked a lot about people and voices that we really admire who speak to truth in ways that uh, are educational to us. Like we learn from these people. They're also inspirational to us in that they sort of inspire us to be more courageous or more uh, uh, bold in speaking to culture. And so yesterday, one of those voices was silenced in a very dramatic way, Charlie Kirk. Um, tell me, tell me your reaction to that.
Yeah, I mean, at first, I'll be completely honest, it was shock and then um, anger. The anger hasn't really worn off, to be honest. Granted, it's only the 11th. So
Yeah,
on the 10th, Charlie Kirk gets assassinated.
right.
And then the next day is September 11th, Memorial Day.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, what a. And not even to mention, but over the weekend, we see that video of that woman who gets her neck stabbed
yeah,
in the train for no reason.
yeah.
And like, I've seen the whole video and it was just horrible.
So you're feeling like this kind of perfect storm,
It's just a perfect storm, man.
things
And
coming together.
yeah, and Charlie getting, because like Charlie was the epitome of like debating like honestly and just tackling through ideas. He wasn't a gotcha kind of guy. Um he was kind, and yeah, people didn't like him because of his views, obviously. But like he wasn't a hateful person.
Right.
And so like he was shot because of views that I hold and that you hold. And so, yeah, I mean, that sucked. And also, you know, he was 31. I'm 27. So, like, he started Turning Point when he was 18 as his organization. So I kind of came up with him, like, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and like I have a brother-in-law who's younger than me, and like he watched his stuff. And, you know, he was huge, regardless of like your opinions about what he thought. Like, he had a huge cultural and political impact. And he was also just a good guy. He was a father and a wife, a father and a husband, and yeah, they they shot him because they disagreed with him.
yeah. I I don't know if I feel. I don't know if my predominant feeling was anger. I mean, certainly I was angered by the injustice of that. I found myself, and this is typical kind of just of my personality, uh, kind of solemn, quiet, like, what in the world?
Yeah,
And I was really struck because I didn't know this until yesterday. I was struck that he was 31. I
yeah,
mean, so young, and yet had accomplished so much. Um, had really become a voice, a cultural voice in our nation and somewheres around the world. And then, yeah, the injustice of, I mean, I've watched numerous of his campus appearances, and he's not mean, and he's not inconsiderate. In fact, just the opposite. He invites his critics, come to the microphone, let's have a discussion. And I've watched enough of them to see some people at the microphone just behave in absolutely ridiculous ways toward him when he's not in any way invited, other than they disagree with him. They hold such, and then to murder him for that is very, very concerning
Yeah.
about what's happening in a culture of ideas and exchanges that's an option
Yeah.
in some people's mind. And then, it's 24 hours, but the amount of coverage about the celebration of it is just like sickening to think that's kind of where we are. Um, but I recognize that you guys are similar ages. I know that he's one of those voices that you had a tremendous amount of admiration for. I know a couple of the other voices that are people that you tend to appreciate and admire for their thinking and contributions they're making to culture. Um, Tell me, what do you do with that anger?
Um, it's only made me want to be like that much louder about what I believe and the things that, he died defending. Not just him because I held them before, but like
Yeah.
that mantle needs to be picked up by somebody. I'm not going to be the next Charlie Kirk, of course, but like, I think
Hey, if
by
you
by
took
the
that beard off, put you in a
grow
suit.
like 6 inches more. But no, like I think we all need to pick up like that.
Yeah.
Like it, instead of making us be afraid, it should give us that much more courage.
Right.
And so like it's a righteous anger that
Hmm.
should move people because it's just the how ludicrous our society has gotten, and then you start killing people, and yeah, like I guess the anger is just going to be put into being that much more unafraid to speak what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. I've read. I mean, I've certainly been following the story on social media and other outlets. It's been encouraging to see the number of people making commentary along the lines of, this should not silence us. This should embolden us. Again, not to be jerks, not to be, you know, not to become like them in uh, our form of attack, but certainly not being silent and speaking up and defending these really important principles of both faith and sort of the nature of American identity.
Yeah.
Um, it's a quote. This isn't word for word, but Orwell says that this is the part that's like really impacted me. It said something. He said something like, "The more a society devolves into lies, the more they'll hate the person who speaks the truth."
Uh-huh.
And I really think that really captures what was portrayed yesterday. Is Charlie Kirk was a truth teller, and he wasn't mean about it, and he wasn't inconsiderate, um, aggressive about it. He literally was wanting to just talk to people. Um, but he was talking themes of truth to a world that doesn't want to hear it,
Yeah.
and it's just it's kind of unsettling to think that somebody thought that was going to be a victory.
I hope that it's woken people up. I think that because Christianity has kind of been the prevailing idea in America for a long time, but now it's not that way anymore.
Yeah,
And I hope that people realize that, like, Jesus said, well, if the world hated me, they're going to hate you too. Like, the world hates us.
yeah,
and they will kill our spokespeople. And so I hope that it makes people, and that doesn't mean that we should, again, like you said, become like them, but we need to keep that in mind, and like Charlie did, try to change people's minds, but also just be a lot smarter about, if you have kids, where they go and
To school,
where they go to school,
or who they're learning from.
yeah, who they're learning from, who they're hanging out with, who you're listening to.
Yeah.
Like, these people hate the things that we value. And I hope that people realize that this is not a game. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, some of what I'm reading in response is that it's very much a wake-up call, even perhaps a line in the sand that again, very unfortunate, his loss, but his loss could in fact inspire a bit of a movement of greater courage and boldness about things that matter. Because I think the last 10, 15, 20 years, there's been a certain amount of intimidation, and people have shrunk back and have felt, I'll just choose to be silent because it's safer. And I think what happened yesterday may have shaken a generation of people to say, no, that's not going to get us where we need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm worried about is that, they killed the nice guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, well, what if the next guy ain't so nice? And there's a lot of people out there that are angry, and they don't have the, I guess, wisdom to not act on it like I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no.
The
next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting to the backwash of this.
Yeah.
Good and bad. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Because, like, man, like that woman on the train, like, that was already enough. I was already like, why? How can we be in a place? And then not only that, there were grown men sitting around her that did nothing.
Yeah.
What? And then they kill Charlie, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Something's got to change.
Something's got to change. Well, thank you for letting me interview you.
Yeah, thanks for dealing with all of my very sporadic responses to some things.
No, it's all right.
Just trying to fit it all in without it being 4 hours long.
Which has always been our struggle.
Yes, that I've never cared about.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate your friendship and appreciate your heart.
Yeah, appreciate you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening today. We'll see you next time on Cibolo Creek Conversations.
Nailed it.
Did I nail it?
All right.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of Cibolo Creek Community Church. If you did, please consider supporting the ministry of our church. Your donations make a difference. To check out more resources or to share a gift, please visit us at cibolocreek.com. Thanks for listening.